So for your local development environment, the first thing you want to do is download VirtualBox. You'll be able to do that here. Once it's installed, you'll want to get Ubuntu 14.04, which is the working version in the production environment. So when the download finishes, you'll want to create a new virtual machine instance. You can call it Mobile Judge, set it to Linux. We can keep the default settings. This is all fine. Now when you start it, it'll ask you for the image that you just downloaded. And finally, Ubuntu will start up. Great, so now you'll have to actually install Ubuntu. This is all fine. You can just click continue. And I know that this might scare you. It says erase disk and install Ubuntu, but because it's on a virtual machine, it's a virtual disk. So this is all fine. It won't affect your actual host environment. So just click continue. Click your time zone. So this might be a bit tricky because the OK button is outside of the screen, but if you just double click on the option English, or you can tab through to what would be the OK button, you should be able to move on. Here, set your name to whatever you want your local environment name to be. I just set it here to MJ Dev, and set your password to whatever you'd like it to be. And so here you can tab through to the OK button. And I'll just allow this to finish. Okay, so the next step would be to download and install Sencha. Here I'm using my personal VM, so you'll notice that the name has changed, but you can run this command to download it. This should take a little while, maybe a minute or two, and then you can go ahead and unzip it and run the script. Okay, so now that you've installed Sencha, we'll want to install some useful tools for the operating system and for your development environment. So we'll want to run these commands: sudo apt update, sudo apt get upgrade, and finally do a reboot. you'll need to install Node.js in order for the project to work correctly. So here, just run sudo apt install Node.js and do a symlink between the installation site and the user bin node, so that you can just run node. If you run node v, you'll get the version and you'll know that it's running properly. Next, you'll want to install npm, run npm-v so that you'll know that it's installed properly. Install these other tools as well just by running these commands. You'll need to install Redis using wget. You'll get the latest version from the Redis site by just using this URL. Finally, you'll need to untar the directory, do these make commands in order to create the right structure inside the directory. You'll need to go into utils, where you'll find the install server script. This script will install Redis and the Redis command line interface. So you can do Redis CLI-v in order to make sure that it's installed correctly. Now go up to two directories levels, and you can remove the Redis folder and the Redis tarball. Alright, so the next step is installing Git. We'll need Git to download our project. Once you've installed Git, we can install the grunt command line interface and authd. In order to check that authd was installed correctly, we'll run authd-v, and that should print out the version number. Okay, moving on, we'll need to install a couple tools. You can just copy and paste all this stuff. Before we actually get to installing PHP, here it's important that we install PHP 5 instead of PHP 7, as PHP 7 introduces breaking changes, and so the project will not work correctly. So make sure to use PHP 5. Moving on, we'll need to make some changes here to this php.ini file. We'll need to replace this 1 with a 0 before running the next commands. Now finally, when you get to sudo apt install phpMyAdmin, you will get a prompt. It's important not to check any of the web servers that the prompt gives you, as Nginx is not part of the list. So just make sure to follow these directions to configure a user and a password, and you should be fine. Next, we'll be installing Nginx, just using the sudo apt-get install Nginx command. After that installs, we'll need to change a few things. So we'll need to edit this file for the MIME types. We'll add the following 4 MIME types. Now it's important to note that one of these might already exist in this file. It's okay to delete the previous one. It's important not to have duplicates, or else the project will not work. Moving on, we need to make another change to this file. Just add this line right here before the MIME types, and for this file, all you need to do is just copy and paste the configuration that we have provided. It's important to make sure that it's all right, or else the project won't work. Now we need to check that Apache is not running. If it is running, we want to run service apache to stop. And once that's stopped, we will want to restart Nginx. Once it's restarted, you can check on your local host 127.0.0.1 to make sure that your site is up, or at least that you're not getting any nginx errors. So now we want to navigate to this directory and download the latest version of the project, which should be here, though this URL might not be the same as the one provided by the senior project team. But if it is, then all is good. Once we clone it into this directory, there should be a project that gets created with the name MobileJudge10. And because of the silly kind of structure that we are made to follow when we turn this in, we'll have to move some things around. So we'll have to pull out this HTML folder. So you can just do that by doing this sudo move command. It's important to note that this HTML file is where our project will live. So moving on, we want to go into HTML. We want to remove the directory called oauthd and create our own using sudo oauthd init. Now this will prompt you, actually this is out of place, sorry. Okay. And so just call the new instance oauthd type Y to the prompt for installing the plugins. Once it's all done, you can cd change directory into the the new oauthd directory, and you can test that it works by running oauthd start. So this will actually take control of your keyboard and the console. So you might want to do a Control-C so that we can continue. Okay. And so here you'll want to symlink the PHP myadmin instance that's installed on your machine to the one in our HTML directory. If you go up to the HTML directory and go into the API folder, you can do an npm rebuild, and we'll just start the server by doing a sudo node index.js. This by itself starts the server locally. You can run it with PM2, but this will suffice. Next, we'll need to start or actually build the database, and the way you do that is by obtaining the SQL file by extracting the database from the production MobileJudge site. So you'll want to go to the production site /phpMyAdmin, log in with the credentials given to you by Sajati, click on Online Judges 7, then the Export tab, and select Custom. Now there will be some boxes for a couple of ads. Click Go at the bottom of the page and you'll download the SQL file. Now the way you import this is you first have to create a user with the same credentials in your local database by going to your localhost /phpMyAdmin and use the credentials you created during the MariaDB MySQL install. So you'll be able to import it using this command in the terminal. What you'll want to do is replace your username with the actual username that you created, and you'll be prompted for a password, and just use the password that you created. So if your virtual machine currently does not have a JRE installed, you'll want to run the sudo apt-get install, the default JRE. And in order to check that it all works, just type sencha by itself, and it should just print the current sencha version to the console. So finally, to build the project, you want to go to the dev folder, which is also in the MobileJudge directory. It should contain an app and an app.js. What you want to do is a sencha app refresh, and in order to build the production version, do sencha app build production. Now, this will build a project, and the new files will be found in dev build production, dev/build/production. And what you want to do is pull those out to the HTML folder. You also have the ability to run dev and testing, which will not obfuscate the JavaScript when you look at it in the console. It's a very helpful tool for when you're debugging and just developing in general. Nextly, deploying to the production server. So this is very important. These steps are a bit different than what you would do locally. You're going to use the Node Process Manager, PM2. And so you're going to check if any processes are running using PM2ls and stop any that might be. Usually the ones that are up are MJ API and MJ OAuth. So once those are stopped, you'll want to use some FTP program or maybe just SEP some files into the production server. Transfer the API, classic, modern, and app folders. Basically anything that has been modified, you'll want to move into the production site so that your changes will appear. So because the version of Node on your local machine might be different than the version of Node on the production machine, you may have to remove the Node modules and run a sudo npm install. Finally, once this is done, you can restart the Nginx server and restart the two services that will start the server, MJ API and MJ OAuth, and you can browse to mj.cs.fiu.edu and you should see your changes appear. Now it's important to note that you should make the appropriate changes to the database or else your changes will not appear. So any changes you make locally to your local database, make sure you change in the production database. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you and good luck.